Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me for my overview of the Robin Tim Drake Compendium Volume 1 from DC Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So what we have here is the latest compendium from DC Comics, and this is Robin Tim Drake Compendium 1. The cover looks different than what was solicited. I do believe the cover solicited was this right here. This is the trade paperback Volume 3 Solo, which I'll go over here in a little bit, the comparison and everything. The spine of the book, Robin Tim Drake Compendium 1, DC logo, and I do believe that is a Tom Lyle piece right there. Speaking of Tom Lyle, man, I miss that guy. A Robin is Born, the little bit of the, pretty much synopsis of the book, and then the design. I really like this design. I don't know what it is. I'll have to look. I think it might be a Chip Kidd design. Or at least it reminds me of one. Down here is where you're going to find the ISBN. And the retail price, $59.99. Now, this is a compendium, so it is a soft cover. It is a matte finish on that soft cover. I love that Tom Grummett piece. And this really makes up the first three trade paperbacks of the recent, well, I say recent, these have been out for a few years, printings of Robin trade paperbacks here. So Reborn, Triumphant, and Solo. There's actually, don't think that, oh, well, I already have those, I guess I don't need this. There's actually more stories in the compendium than there are in these trade paperbacks, and I'll explain what those stories are here in a little bit. So we are going to crack this book open. We are going to check out the stories, look at the artwork, and I'll give you a pitch for these particular stories collected in here and what timeline it looks like to be in the Batman reading order of things. And then, of course, we'll look at the build of the book. But, I mean, if you compendium, you probably know what that means. So it is the size of a trade paperback, right? Except a lot thicker. Oh, my goodness, this one's thick. All right, let's go ahead and look at one of my favorite Robin collections. All right, let's go ahead and open this book up. There's your title page, Robin Tim Drake, Compendium 1. And here are the credits. Tim Drake, Compendium 1, Chuck Dixon, Alan Grant, Doug Mensch, Dan Jurgens, Wheezy, don't call her Wheezy, Louise Simonson, John Wagner, Ian Edgington are the writers. Tom Lyle, Norm Breyfogle, Kieran Dwyer, Tom Grummett, Ed Hannigan, to name a few of the pencilers. Down here are your inkers like Bob Smith, Steve Mitchell, Scott Hanna, Fred Fredericks, Ray Kreising, and then down here, those are just some. You also have inkers like Jim Aparo, who also did some of the pencils. Adrian Roy, Joe Orlando, Glenn Whitmore, some of the colors here, and the lettering by Tim Harkins, Todd Klein, Ken Brusnak, and Albert de Guzman, just to name a few, including Jim Aparo, a legend. Gosh, that guy did just about everything. Table of contents, where you're going to find each of these stories, and they actually have number pages. People always ask me, do they still do it? I think that was a mistake in a couple of Omnis, and DC wasn't alone. I mean, Marvel did that. I can think of just a couple times that they did it. But yeah, DC do it in their Omnis, where they have a table of contents, but no page numbers. But they do here. So here's your table of contents, where we're kicking it off, and then where it ends. You're going to find the issue that the story originated from, the date it was published, and then, of course, what page number. And they even give credit to the cover artist. Love that. It's a little confusing for people that have never read Robin, that it starts off in a story from 1999. Well, it's a little bit of a retro story. And then you go back to 1990. So don't worry, this has taken place in the past. So that's what I want to talk about first, is what is collected in here, because we are kicking it off with material from the Batman 80-page giant number 2. You also have Batman 455 to 457, 465 to 469, 480, Detective Comics 618 to 621, Robin, the very first miniseries 1 through 5, Robin 2, The Joker's Wild, that's the second miniseries 1 through 5, or no, that one's only 4 issues, Robin 3, Cry for Huntress, And that one's a 6-issue miniseries. And then we get the Robin ongoing series 1 through 5. We get the annuals 1 and 2 that take place before the miniseries, or before the ongoing series. It's a little confusing, I know, but I'll explain. Superman 70, Superman the Man of Steel 14, and then stories from Showcase 93, 1 through 6, and 11 through 12. 1,103 pages. This thing is a beast. And like I mentioned, has been previously collected before in trade paperbacks, but not everything, including this 80-page story. So this is a little bit of a retro story that showcases the relationship between Tim Drake after the events of A Lonely Place in Dying. A Lonely Place of Dying was a story I guess I'll have to talk about. But this is the relationship between Dick Grayson and Tim Drake. So really quickly, it's an interesting collection because they are putting stories in here that are focused on Tim Drake, but they are leaving out important things like his first appearance or the first time he meets Dick Grayson and Batman, Bruce Wayne. But I guess because those have been collected in the Cape Crusader and the Dark Knight Detective collections, they're not collecting it here. It would have been nice just to have it as a whole, like, oh, this is the kid and this is where he goes from there. So if you read A Lonely Place of Dying, that's where this takes place. Immediately afterwards, they do a quick little 2-page recap as to what's happened and how Tim Drake got involved with Batman to begin with. So just a little bit of history, and I mean just a little bit of history. I promise I won't go through the whole thing. Mainly because Tim Drake is my favorite Robin, so I have to control myself. But here we go. Robin. The first Robin was Dick Grayson. Coming right out of the circus, going under the wings of Batman, training under Batman. That kid eventually grew up, wanted to make his own name in life, and left Batman to go join the Teen Titans. He was still with Batman from time to time, and then got a new superhero named Nightwing, inspired by Superman, of course. So Batman felt lonely. He's like, what am I gonna do? Man, this sucks. I like having a kid sidekick and risking his life. But anyway, along comes Jason Todd. Jason Todd comes in, and he's a little bit different of a Robin. They met because Jason Todd was trying to steal the Batmobile's tires. And Batman's like, yo, kid, what are you doing? Instead of being a punk, why don't you come and join me, and I'll make you into my sidekick. And that's how we got the second Robin. Unfortunately, something horrible happened to Jason Todd because of the Joker. And if you haven't read A Death in the Family, I strongly suggest reading that if you want to find out what happens to that story. Of course, later on, things came back with the Red Hood, but that's a story for another day. All right. So now, during A Lonely Place of Dying, Batman had no Robin. Dick Grayson had become his own man. There was a kid that was introduced in the pages of Batman Year 3. That's right, there's more than one year. There's Batman Year 2 as well, but we'll talk about that later. In Year 3, we're introduced to the Flying Graysons and also a kid in the audience named Tim Drake. Now, Tim Drake was a huge, by the way, named after Tim Burton, because that popularity of that movie brought so many people to read the comics. I love that. I hope that still happens from time to time. All right, Tim Drake, smartest kid ever. I love this character. What he did was he was there the night the Graysons fell and died, and he saw Dick Grayson perform all these tricks. Later on, he saw that Bruce Wayne had adopted Dick Grayson, and later on, he saw those same acrobatic tricks on Robin. And he put 2 and 2 together and said, wait a second, if that kid is doing the same acrobatic tricks that the Flying Graysons did, and Dick Grayson is the sole survivor of that accident, that means Dick Grayson's Robin, Batman is Bruce Wayne. Got it. And that is Tim Drake. Before the age of computers, he was able to figure this out. Now, when he was introduced in, this is 1989, 1990, he was more savvy with computers. So he figured that Batman always needs a Robin. So he was trying to get Dick Grayson to join back up with Robin, or with Batman, after the events of A Death in the Family. And Dick Grayson's like, no, I can't. I'm my own person. And Bruce is like, yeah, I'm okay rolling solo. But Dick Grayson was like, you know what? Maybe you should stick around. And he does. Now, Tim Drake is a little bit different than Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson. He hasn't lost anybody. As a matter of fact, he's pretty well off. And his parents are still alive during that storyline. Things change, because, unfortunately, tragedy needs to happen to build characters. And I'm not going to go into full details. So, this takes place after those events. This takes place after the meeting of Tim Drake and after A Lonely Place of Dying, and then him sticking around the Batcave and hanging out with Batman, because that's what kids do, I guess. But we do have the story here with this voodoo character named the Obeah Man who's poisoning people. As a matter of fact, something horrible happens through the beginning of these storylines. This is the Detective Comics, written by Alan Grant and drawn by Norm Breyfogle, and both of these gentlemen have just passed away. It's sad when I was looking at those names how many of them are gone. So this draws Bruce and Tim Drake closer. And during this time, Tim Drake's father's also in a coma because of something that happened in that previous arc. Now, he's still not Robin. You don't see him in costume. As a matter of fact, he keeps looking at the glass case with the Robin costume going, that's a lot of weight to carry. I can't do that. So he proves himself here by taking out the costume, not listening to Batman, and helping Batman fight against the Scarecrow and his goons. Now, this is also during the time when Vicky Vale was a big part of the comics, too. So, a little bit of a love interest. And for the first time in issue 457, we do see Tim Drake in the Robin costume. But not only that, you see him in his new Robin costume designed specifically for him. That way, the original Robin costume can stay in the glass case as a memory. So, immediately after this issue, we kick off with the Robin miniseries. This Robin, man, I remember picking this up and I was like, this is why Tim Drake is my favorite Robin. I love this character. And I remember that Brian Boland cover. I remember having to go and get this because I was a big fan of Batman Detective Comics. I wasn't getting really the Legends of the Dark Knight or the Shadow of the Bat eventually, but I did pick up Tim Drake and followed his adventures. So here, what's happening is that, Batman realizes he made a mistake with Jason Todd. He wants Tim Drake to be properly trained, so he sends him to Tibet. This is where he meets, this is Shen, but he's supposed to train under this martial arts master. However, things go awry when his crossing paths with King Snake and his men. Like, his minions just have taken over a little bit of the city. So, of course, Tim Drake's like, well, I'm not Robin, but maybe I can try to help in some kind of way. So he starts donning the costume in another... I love the fact that he's in a completely different continent. Now, he's not alone, I mentioned the King Snake. He's the villain. There's also Lynx, who will play a part of this, but who also takes him under his wing, surprisingly, is Lady Shiva. And Lady Shiva plays an important part in Batman's life, too. Love that. Oh, man, just a kid, 15 years old, rolling solo in another country, training martial arts. The stakes are up because he's with these murderers. Like, these people are not shying away from killing kids. King Snake is a little bit of a bastard, just the way he treats people. And like I said, Lynx playing an important part. That bleeds into the Batman 465 storyline right here that has a lot of those characters coming back, this time trying to take over Gotham City. And this time Batman gets involved because Robin is not rolling solo. So they get to fight off against all of these gang members. And man, this is rough right here where, like I said, they're not shying away from doing horrible things. They kill a kid, dress him up as Robin just to send a message to Batman. That is dark, and we've seen that later on. But yeah, this is the big fight with the King Snake. Now, the next storyline is probably one of my favorite Robin stories ever, Tim Drake stories ever, and that is The Joker's Wild. Now, we haven't seen Joker in the comics for a while. After the events of A Death in the Family, he kind of disappeared. Actually, as a matter of fact, he was believed dead, and this is when he comes back. And if you've read A Death in the Family, Joker thinks that Robin is no more. So when he sees Robin on TV, and he's like, wait a second. How is that kid walking around? Oh, I better take care of this. And that's where this story takes us. Not only that, but also Batman is out of town. So it's like Robin, Tim Drake, having to fight off against one of the craziest Batman villains and most dangerous Batman villain. Oh man, it's so good. I love that story. The next story is this issue right here. This is The Father I Never Knew. And man, it's such a good issue. Finally, Frank starts waking up from his coma and he's reconnecting with his child, but he also feels like he needs to protect his kid because he hasn't been there, right? Oh my gosh, there are some beautiful and touching moments in this particular story. And I love the fact that one story just flows into the next. Did I call him Frank? No, his name's not Frank. Sorry. His name is Jack. Jack Drake. The next story arc has a team up with Superman. This time it's just Robin and Superman. And they're fighting off against maybe vampires. This was not collected in the Robin trade paperbacks. Here we have the character of Anarchy from the Eclipso storyline. This is a character that they were really trying to build up. You can almost tell, like, maybe they were trying to make him the next Robin or the next, like, big character from the Batman books. And this is mapped before the ongoing series, because this story takes place during the Eclipso storyline. The next story is the Cry of the Huntress, rather. So this does have the meeting of the Huntress and Tim Drake against the KG Beast. So this is a character that was created by Jim Starlin, but this is the fight against him. You see the connection between father and son through here. And one of the most important things I need to note is that the Tim Drake I've been talking about is a completely different Tim Drake than the one from the New 52. In the New 52, DC took these stories and said, all right, we're restarting the origin of Tim Drake. He's not the same character. The Tim Drake you're reading about now is not really the same character. This character, unfortunately, he's kind of gone the way of Wally West during the New 52. He just doesn't really exist. I think the heart and the soul of the character is still there in a way, but the origin and all these adventures, like the things he did, honestly, it gets a little confusing because some of it is still canon and some of it isn't. But it's different. It's like, it's a different Tim Drake. And if you like that character, that's awesome. More power to you. That's great. But this is the character I grew up with, and that's why I'm passionate about talking about these particular stories that I've enjoyed so much. This is the Showcase story, which of course teams him up with Catwoman, but of course not at first. It becomes a Catwoman story first, and later Tim Drake gets involved. Now, something you are going to be noticing through these stories, it's the different eras that Tim Drake is part of, because as these stories are going on, we're going from these issues of Batman and Batman 455 to Detective Comics 618, and then we're like at Batman 480. So a few years have passed, and by the time we get, this is the second annual, the Bloodlines annual, which introduces us to Razor Sharp, just like each of those annuals introduced us to a new character. Which takes us to this era where Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman anymore. Takes us to the Nightfall era. This is the team up with Nightwing right here against Cobra. The Nightfall era when Jean-Paul Valley was introduced. So you're going to be seeing some Jean-Paul Valley stories in here. And then eventually you're going to get the kickoff to his first issue. I really wish they had done a little bit of a recap page, like, this story takes place immediately after this issue of Nightfall, or at least included the last couple of issues of the Night Quest when him and Jean-Paul Valley fought. But maybe, I don't know, because it is a little weird to go from Bruce Wayne, Batman, they're fighting together, and then we see the armored Batman. Now, if you're keeping up with Batman, right, like Nightfall, you know exactly what's going on. This is during the Night Quest era, where he's choking the life out of Tim Drake, and Tim Drake's like, you know what? I'm just going to take the Redbird and get the hell out of here. I got my driver's license because my dad is in a wheelchair and I can drive around. I'm done, man. This is when he starts building a relationship with Ariana, this young lady at school. And then, of course, we have these particular characters. Shotgun, that's right, man. I like Sam. What's his name? Sam Shotgun. He's a detective that's trying to find out who is stealing and hijacking all these cars, and thinks that Tim Drake is a member of these people. But really, this is a build-up to the return of the Clue Master and the Electrocutioner. And what is that guy's name? Not Banter. The Baffler is what he ends up calling himself. This guy right here. Yeah, the Baffler, the Master of Mysteries. But also the return of Stephanie Brown. So they have met in the past, and it's not collected in here. Her first appearance is not collected in here. But this isn't a spoiler collection, so it makes sense why it's not collected in here. And by this point, it is Chuck Dixon and it is Tom Grummett just firing on all cylinders. Like, this is the Robin that I loved so much. And when I stopped reading comics, it was one of the comics that I missed reading monthly. Because he was a teenager, he was growing up, and going through all these changes and trying to become his own person. During this time, you had Nightwing go off into Bloodhaven, and you have Batman come back and take his place as, or I'm sorry, Bruce Wayne come back and take his place as Batman, and Dick was just kind of left, or Tim Drake was just left alone and going to school and having all this drama at school. Man, I love those stories. So over here, you are going to see some posters and pinups, and of course, the covers right here with the trade. I remember the little trading cards they would have. The holographic trading cards. And then the covers to the collected editions. This is the one by Travis Charest. More covers. And then the unused Robin costume designs. Neil Adams, Norm Breyfogle. I love the R. The R had to stay. It's just so iconic for the costume. That looks very similar to Damien's. And the final Robin and Batman design there by Graham Nolan. And then what other books you can buy. Now, the book has 1,103 pages, and it retails for $59.99. It is glued binding, and there's a spine. Honestly, I love this story. I'm sorry. The reason why I didn't do this like a couple of weeks ago is because I had fun. I wanted to go back and reread these stories in between other books that I had to read. Now, it is thinner paper stock than what you see in these trades right here. So these trade paperbacks have thick glossy paper. This has a thinner matte paper stock. And it would be near impossible to do a compendium this size with this thick glossy paper. I don't think it would hold. So the art really does pop out a little more here. You know, the colors really stand out compared to here. It looks just a little bit flatter, not by much. I mean, this is good. I mean, this is the type of paper we would get. Actually, this is better than the paper we would get in the single issues. So it looks good, but you can see the blacks and the contrast here a lot better. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this compendium, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the content, the page count, and build of this book. Let me know in the comments down below if you plan on picking this up, if you have the trade paperbacks, if you're going to upgrade, if you're hoping one day we'll get an omnibus, and what other series you would like to see collected in the compendium format if you are a fan of the compendiums. If you have any more questions, please leave them down below, and more importantly, this is the big one. Who is your favorite Robin? That's right, Tim Drake, Dick Grayson. Why did I almost say Duck Grayson? Sorry, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Damian Wayne, Starro, Stephanie Brown. Who was your favorite Robin? I love asking that question, and people all have different answers. I'm sure somebody will say Kelly. But it doesn't matter who your favorite Robin was. Leave those comments down below. Smash that like button on the way out. Check us out on Patreon and Spreadshop. Amazing ways to support the channel. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.